this next text example, I'm going to show how to put text on a path. So I'll start by making a new composition. I'll call this one text example 3. Same settings. I'll hit OK. I'll create a centered text layer. And I'm going to make the text a little smaller in this example here. Let me choose a smaller font size. Okay, now point I'm getting at here is you're not always going to want your text to be perfectly horizontal or perfectly vertical. So what do? You have to create a path. You take your pen tool, you create a path line on the text layer of the curve or shape that you want. And then in your timeline, you open up your layer, go to your text group, go to path options, and where it says path, you choose your mask that you just drew. That attaches your text to the path. Pretty straightforward. It also adds some properties that weren't there before. Reverse path, that's basically an on-off control, which side of the path you want it on. Perpendicular to path, do you want it perpendicular to the path or perpendicular, the letters perpendicular to the frame? Again, this is just an on-off switch. Force alignment, if that's on, it spreads the letters out to the full width of the path. Now, if you have the force alignment turned on, the first margin value will control where, the left edge of the text is on the path, and the last margin will control where the right edge of the text is on the path. So you can be very specific with, placing your text or controlling how wide it is on the path. Now here's a tip though. Let me undo that. If the force alignment is turned off and you use either the first or last margin value, doesn't matter which, that will actually move the text along the path. And so this is a great technique for animating text along curved paths. So if I scrub this first margin value, and I'll hold the shift key while I scrub it so it goes in bigger increments, and I'll put the text off the frame, click the stopwatch for the first margin property, and then if I go forward a few seconds, and I'll scrub the first margin value, and notice how it continues to move in the direction that the path is pointing. So even if the path, if the path is short, it keeps going. It just keeps going in the direction of the path. Okay, so this is a great way to be able to create animated typography where your text is moving along a curved path. Now, it is worth mentioning the mask or path line that it's attached to could also be animating. If we went to our mask group and open up our mask 1 group, find our mask path property, we could animate that path. So for example, if I wanted this path to be kind of like changing as the text is moving along it, like maybe I want this center point here to, let me grab my move tool. Right now the whole path is selected, so I'm going to click away from it and then click just on the individual point. There we go. And let's say I move that point up here, move this point down here, and maybe move this one down here and change the curve like that. Okay, but you can see that that path now animates. The text stays connected to it. So, and then maybe over here, I, change it like that. Maybe I bring that part up there and that part down there. So now the path is totally animating and the text is moving and connecting, staying connected to the path. Pretty cool. So this opens up a lot of possibilities for animating type. And of course, you can still add text animator groups to the text itself. So if I wanted the letters to maybe be spinning or something as they moved along the path, I could go to my text group, add a text animator with rotation or whatever property I want to animate, And if I want the letters to be spinning, I could, set some rotation keyframes there to get the letters to spin around. So as they're traveling along the path, you can see they're now spinning too. Pretty cool. Okay, let's do another text on a path example, though, using shapes, not just because this is an open path, okay? And when you do an open path, that's pretty easy. But shapes are a little different. So I'll do another example here. I'll call this one text example 4. And again, I'm going to make a new text layer and type in some text. Now this time, instead of using the pen tool to draw a path, I'm going to select my layer. I'm going to take one of my shape tools, rectangle or star or polygon or whatever, and I'll make a shape on the layer. Now when we make a shape on an existing layer, of course it becomes a layer mask. And that means that anywhere outside of that mask shape is being hidden or masked out. So if we're creating a shape on the layer for purposes of laying out text, we don't want it to mask the layer. So the first thing we need to do is go to our mask group, set the mask operator instead of add to none. So it's not actually functioning as a mask. It's just there, so we can use it for the text. Now, if we go to the text group, just like in the last example, if we go to path options, choose that mask as our path, the text is going to be attached to that path. Now for this example here, I think what I'll do is, let me make the shape here a little bigger. I'm going to select it, hit Command T to make it bigger and maybe straighten it out a little bit here. Okay, good enough. Now I want to select all the text. Here's a tip. Just double click the text layer. That selects the text. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple spaces after it actually, and then I'm going to select all of it, and I'm going to say Command C, Command C, and then Command V, and I'm going to paste it a bunch of times to wrap around. Now to get out of this typing mode, I'll switch back to the arrow tool, and in my character panel, let me scale it down a little bit to make it smaller. And I'm going to go ahead and, let me select it again. There we go. Command C, Command V. There we go, because I want to fill the whole shape. And again, I can adjust the size in the property panel or the character panel. And I'm going to go reverse path and flip it to the other side. There we go. Now here's a tip. Use your tracking value when you're putting text around a shape. You can use your horizontal spacing in the character panel, your tracking value here, to close the gap. All right, that's pretty cool. And if I animate the margin value, like I did in the last example, I can get the text to look like it's rotating around the shape. Pretty cool. So set my work area, see how that looks. Okay, so this is how we can add a shape and then lay text out around the shape and animate the text moving around the shape. And just like in my last example, if I animated the mask path property of that shape, I could, animate the shape as well. Now, one last tip I want to throw out there with this shape thing is in After Effects, you've really only got a few shapes, right? You got rectangles and circles and stuff. You don't have a lot of choices. But in Photoshop, you have a lot of shapes. So if I jump over to Photoshop for a minute, and you can, copy and paste shapes from Photoshop or Illustrator over into After Effects for purposes of laying out text. So in Photoshop, you have a custom shape tool and custom shape library that you can dip into. So once Photoshop opens up here, I'll show you what I mean. So in Photoshop, I would create a new document that is the composition frame size. So grab my HDTV 720 and hit create. And then in the Photoshop toolbar, you want to find your shape tools and find the one called custom shape. Oops. This one right here, custom shape. There we go. Then in the toolbar, very important point here, you want it to say path, not shape layer, not pixels. It should be a path in order to be able to copy and paste it over into After Effects. The operation here needs to be set to path. Now to choose your shape, you click on this shape drop-down menu. Now, if you do not see the group called Legacy Shapes, I want to show you how to add that, because in Photoshop, there's a lot of very useful shapes in this Legacy Shape library, but it isn't showing in your shape menu by default. To get it, you have to go to your window menu, pull up the Shapes panel. There is a panel dedicated just to the shapes. And in the Shapes panel, click on the flyout menu from the side and choose Legacy Shapes and More to add the Legacy Shape library, the older shape library, to your menu. Once you do that, those shapes will be available in the Shape drop-down menu. Now, for After Effects artists, this is a useful collection of shapes if you go into the Legacy Shapes, because there are things like copyright signs, trademark symbols, voice bubbles, all types of arrows, film strip borders, talk bubbles, music notes. There's just all kinds of useful stuff for doing motion graphics work in this collection. So you grab whichever shape you want to use. So I'll just grab one of these arrows, for example. And then again, making sure that the operation here is set to path, not to pixels or shape layer. And then you click and draw your shape. Then you copy it, edit, copy. You switch back over to After Effects. You select your text layer and you paste the shape onto the text layer. Okay, now I'm going to delete the previous shape, the previous mask that I had on there. And just like in the earlier example here, I need to set the mask operation to none, so it's not actually masking the text. And then in the text group, I set the path option to the mask that I want to use. There we go. And so this is how we can bring shapes from Photoshop or Illustrator into After Effects and then lay text out around the shape. All right, hopefully this gives you some ideas for, creative typography using paths with text. And in the last text example that I'm going to do today, I'm going to show how to use the source text option. So we'll see that in the next recording.